What makes The Shining so creepy? In his video essay on the subject, Michael Tucker considers it to be the ambiguity of the threat to the hotel's residents that is the cause of the anxiety you feel when you watch the film. The expressionless faces of the Grady twins not giving any indication of their intention. The ball rolling towards Danny whilst he is playing, although no one has thrown it to him, and the unknown nature of room 237 are just some examples of this ambiguity. But the thing I find most disturbing, the thing I find most creepy in The Shining is, and has always been, the music. This is Natura Sonoris No. 1 by Polish composer Krzysztof Penderecki. It begins with sforzando chords of indeterminate pitch that are produced by playing the highest possible notes on the instruments. This sounds to me like an animal yelping, or that moment in a nightmare where you try to scream, but can't form any words. Penderecki's music attempts to liberate sound beyond the confines of traditional instrumentation. It explores the extremes of register, timbre and texture, and achieves a form of musical saturation by overlapping dense clusters of notes. Stanley Kubrick knew that Penderecki's sound world was perfect for The Shining, but it was left to his musical editor, Gordon Stainforth, to decide what would work for the final cut. Stainforth said of Kubrick's musical aesthetic, "The music had to be over the top. Anything less would not have been true to the movie's underlying manic quality as the madness unfolds towards the end." The question is, how did Stainforth achieve this? I think there are two main ways that he approaches this task. The first method he used was manipulation. A number of scenes in The Shining had to be significantly altered to fit the music, or the other way around. This might seem like an obvious thing to mention, and something that is done in all films, but it is the enormous care and thought that has been put into how each shot should line up with the score that makes it so interesting. Take, for example, the scene when Danny sees the Grady twins for the second time whilst riding around the hotel. The scene is separated into 16 shots, with shots at the beginning and the end of the scene being significantly longer than those in the middle. In fact, shots 7 to 14 last only a total of 11 seconds. Very specific parts of the scene have been designed to line up with the music, which in this case is the piece we heard before, the Natura Sonoris No. 1 by Penderecki. Let's see how this works. The scene begins at 2 bars before figure 2 in the score and appears from nothing. We hear 2 ominous sforzando brass chords, which are eventually followed by a percussive hit, just before we are shown the twins.
Hello, Danny. Come and play with us.
The next major point where the music lines up with the action is where we are shown the bodies of the girls for the first time. This lines up with a percussion and piano hit. This is followed by a rising scale in the woodwind, which finishes just before the last "and ever." Danny then slaps his hands to his face on the last note of the brass scale. Finally, Danny looks through his fingers just as the microtonal cluster in the orchestra disappears, to be replaced by a chord in the harmonium. Stainforth said of this particular scene, "What I did, I hope, throughout the scenes with Danny on the bike was to create something more visceral and rhythmic, trying to make this feel more like a direct experience." There was also the enormous practical problem of making a whole piece of pre-composed music work with the scene. I did actually take some liberties here, but the one thing I will never do is mess with the original phrasing of the music. It has to work with the film, or it'll never work. The second and most remarkable way that Stainforth achieved that over-the-top feel that Kubrick was looking for was to actually overlap multiple recordings. This is Stainforth's cue chart from Reel 15, the climax of the film, where Danny's being chased by Jack through the maze. It lists all of the pieces that are being played in individual shots, and you can see that in a number of cases, many pieces are being played at the same time. Let's have a look at the end of this sequence to see how it works. In this particular scene, not only do we have multiple pieces being played on top of each other, we also have multiple copies of the same piece. Stainforth uses 3 different copies of Kanon, Penderecki's 1962 work for string orchestra and tape. But this is also combined with Penderecki's 1971 work, their Natura Sonoris No. 2 for orchestra. The result is completely unsettling, completely horrific, manic, over the top, and undeniably creepy. These scenes are just 2 examples that show the level of detail that was required to create perfectly crafted shots, where the music, sound effects, and visuals work seamlessly together to create a complete, unified, artistic expression. In a word, genius.